This is Crockett36, and what you're seeing here is accessanalyze.org. I've been sort of starting a new series. It's sort of one of the easiest series because what I'm going to do is just read and show you a thread on accessanalyze.org. And if you're not already there, I would encourage you to go there. But I think this might be one of the most important topics and discussions that I could put forward for you, and hopefully this would make its way up the chain, up the ladder, I guess, and sort of beseech the creators, and push for help, intervention. Divine intervention there, small d, small g. So we hope that you're listening there. So this is Grand Plans. I'll just show you real quick the thread's name. Grand Plans, 3rd edition, in the forum section of Access Analyze Online. accessanalyze.org, under Access Analyze Online, under Grand Plans 3rd edition. A fellow named Black Elk started this thread. Now he makes some comments that are great. You should check him out. His opening section is really good. But then later we jump from the 42 game, which is what he's talking about specifically, to a 3rd edition Global 1940. And I wrote in response to this, do you all think the splintering of the community is a problem? Some of it is natural, boredom, something new. Some is hopelessness caused by imbalance. And there is no house rule that will ever gain the acceptance of the community like a LH sanctioned version, which he earlier had hinted at as well. I would want him to give us a handicapping system built into every new release, like all of those optional rules in the back of Revised. The benefit would not only be to scale the community and create competition where there is a great disparity of skill and experience, but it would automatically account for unanticipated imbalances in the product. Myself, I don't like the bid. I like the idea of Russian infantry as the equalizer. The best part about using Ivans is that they can be used in almost all of the iterations of our beloved franchise. I've also mentioned on my YouTube channel a way to customize the game by recreating the phony war period. It's if G40 begins in May 1940, what about starting 6 months earlier, giving many of the participants a non-combat move and an extra build? This is what I call owning the game. I also would like it if WOC, Wizards of the Coast, would transition from the outdated idea of a single big get when you buy the game to putting out mods, packs, maps, sculpts like French, etc., so that the buying public can get the official LH version if they so desire, of anything I should have said, which is exactly how they make so much money off of Magic and D&D, nickels and dimes. Black Elk, the originator of the thread, wrote back, exactly. I think I'm going to do this in sort of a hippie mode here. It's actually kind of bizarre given how much interest there is in things like collecting sculpts or additional accessories, dice, chips, counters, or whatnot. Not to mention other variant materials like card decks or speciality rules for expansion scenarios. Of course, you can customize and cobble stuff together using third-party resources and house rules, but I think there's a pretty clear desire on the part of most players for some kind of official guidance in that area. To me, the most sensible approach would be a starter set containing all the essential materials for the basic game, then a series of modular expansions for that starter set, and then periodically a big box, black box, gold box, or whatever, where you can get a bundle of expansion materials incorporated into the sale of the starter materials. The potential for smaller transactions is pretty limitless, I can imagine things like national expansion sets for sculpts and rules for how to incorporate a new player nation into the base game, or unit expansions where you get sculpts for all the existing nations. tried to do something like this with their miniature series, but the obvious issue was that those miniatures were for an entirely different squad-based game that had no application in the existing board games and no real connection to the board game franchise other than the name recognition. The other issue with the big Get model is the boards become outdated way too quickly. The older maps rules become defunct as soon as the new stuff arrives, so you end up with all these total replacements and a bunch of boxes stacking up in the closet, rather than a situation where you could build up for a master collector's game over time. In the digital arena, people tend to grumble about DLCs and such, but to me it makes a lot of sense for the physical board, and is already going on anyway at places like historical board gaming, which is currently filling the void left over by the dearth of official expansion materials. The splintering of the community is a real problem, and there's a definite lack of cohesion when it comes to things like official fixes for game balance. It puts us in a position where people who are trying to play the same game end up playing very different games as they try to address these issues in localized player groups or tournaments with house rules or whatever. I think a lot of people find the idea of a balanced game out of box kind of patronizing at this point. We know it's not going to be balanced by sides. A balanced A and A board has never been realized to date, and the track record there is pretty clear, which is why it's kind of surprising that we still don't have any official remedy or scheme for dealing with this constant problem. Just like admitting that the game is inherently imbalanced already, so we can move past that and find an optimal working solution for choosing sides. More importantly, even if the box game were balanced by both sides, with the perfect starting unit set up, just the right amount of cash, etc., what we are talking about there is game balance among players of roughly equal skill, but that is rarely the situation around the home table. There's almost always a disparity in player ability familiarity. So these games really do require a lot more refined handicapping scheme to give the underdog a leg up. It should be built into the game, part of the gameplay from the get-go, not an afterthought fix. With respect to the A Online project, I'll admit to being a little concerned about that last point. I worried that anecdotal experiences around the office may lead them to think the game is a 50-50 toss-up, and so the issue doesn't need addressing. But that is definitely not the consensus view here. There are probably hundreds of games logged in the PBF section which support the player by forum. The general assessment that the 1942 board was access advantage and seemed to still be even after the tournament tweak. But you really don't even need to go there, because we all know that even if the game was a perfect split by sides, you'd still need a way to deal with disparity in player ability. Just because an expert player can manage not to die as allies doesn't mean the average player will be able to do so. And not every noob is going to want to play as the Axis. Not every noob is going to want to play as Axis because it's the easier side to play. You need a system in place, an official system to deal with this stuff. The traditional tournament bid works all right, but even that is kind of tired at this point in time, and in any case, it still doesn't have the official nod despite being used by pretty much everyone. I'd rather have a series of thematic options spelled out in the rulebook. P.S. This isn't a grand plan, but let's say worst case scenario, and the box game is totally handicapped, hard-coded it, with no way to edit units or provide cash bid or anything like that. What do we do then? Maybe skip the movement phase in the first round for everyone by player agreement. Like nothing can move until round 2. So everyone gets a preliminary purchase before it actually begins in earnest. It's the only thing I can think of right now that might somehow produce a substantially different play pattern. PvP potentially balancing if nothing else is done to vanilla 1942.2, and it's just a direct port. It probably handles the balance on Caucasus and India. The naval builds might be more interesting, or production builds. Following the regular game, sequence players would at least be able to build off each other's purchases to shape the play balance instead of everything going to one side or one player. might work. Allies could then save the American Atlantic transports and allow the U.S. to pick a focus. Britain could try to set up in the Atlantic or build for a hit on Japan out of India Sea Zone 35 so the Allies can get a leg up, but the Axis would also get a chance to build in Sea Zone 15 or Sea Zone 60 or do stuff with the transports that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So I can imagine it going different ways depending on who builds what in the Ghost Round. The practical restrictions of only placing units at the factory territories might be somewhat stabilizing instead of a bid that goes to a battle breaker. I wonder what round 2 would be like then after a round of purchases. Russia would be able to ice the Ukraine battle, and Britain would put the lock on Sea Zone 37, but Germany could probably do some things to compensate, like with the transport buying the med. Not sure how it would shake down, but might be more interesting than vanilla. A full round of purchasing would have to favor Allies for the initiative since they have more nations on the team, but at least it wouldn't be just all to one side. All right, well, that is Black Elk and my interaction on Grand Plans 3rd Edition. Again, he was referring to 42, and particularly, I think, to the new Axis and Allies Online that's coming out through Beamdog. So this is great stuff, and we are hoping this works its way up to Larry and to the people at Wizards of the Coast. You guys got just an opportunity to make a lot of money there, and we are adult players who birthday, Christmas, whenever, before a tournament, after a tournament, want to buy your stuff, and we also want to create our own. That's true. It will continue to happen, but maybe you could in some way, shape, and form hook up with historical board gaming, hook up with AAA creators. I don't know, but anyways, we want some changes, and we want some guidance is what I think one of the words he used, and that I used. So anyways, there you go. Good stuff, I thought. Really good stuff. Feel free to comment below, click, subscribe. All right, guys, take care. Bye.